Hi, I'm Dante,
Happy New Year, and I'm Tommy.
and you're listening to Twigging on to Twig, a podcast where we talk about Wildbow's most locked down web serial, Twig.
Unfortunately, we are not in the middle of the COVID lockdown because that would have been appropriate.
It would have been appropriate,
But
but I wouldn't call it unfortunate because I
that is
do appreciate not being in a lockdown.
that is true. In today's episode, we are exploring virgin territory for me, at least. So
Hmm.
we talk about 3.1 and 3.2, which is something stuff I had not read before here. So just a word of warning: all of the more insightful, smart comments that I had before, if there were any, are going to be farther and fewer in between because I feel far stupider post baby.
Well, hopefully that will be more entertaining.
Mm, mm,
We're not here to be smart. We're here to be entertaining and to enjoy
sure.
this book and have people to talk about it with. So,
Enjoy the book, sure. I don't know if I do entertaining well.
well, we'll let the listeners decide. So, our audiobook descriptions for these two chapters are as follows. 3.1 Welcome back to Radham. Sai is quite frustrated with the Lamb's current assignment. I don't think anything more needs to be said, so let's get right down to it.
Go ahead.
3.2 The Lambs get into their first real job with Mary as a member of the gang. That dull, pointless busy work didn't count. Looks like Mary won't be the one having a hard time, though. Oh, and we also get another delightful little peek at just what kinds of experiments are done down here in the bowels. It really makes you wonder what Radham Academy's ethics board must be like, if they even have
I can guarantee there is no such thing as a random
one.
ethics board.
I kind of want to think that they do, but it's more about how can we grow more unethical things. Or it's like, this is too ethical, we need to do something else. Denied.
Or it's, ethics are a fruit that we have developed. How do we eat them and make them more?
Let us find the biological origin of ethics.
Yes, maybe we can splice two ethics together and have them reproduce into one ethic.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So I don't
Anyway,
I don't think there are any new housekeeping or announcements
well,
things.
I do kind of want to just like acknowledge that it has been a bit of a while since we've done
It,
this.
that is true.
Like even by our own standards.
Hmm.
I think our last recording with Jenny was like 2 months, maybe 3 months ago.
Yeah, but the holidays happen
Yeah, but I wanted to put that out there
that we
because
recognize and
all
understand.
the stuff that happened in arcs 1 and 2, that was a long time ago. We read those, and we're not coming into this with everything fresh in our memories anymore.
Absolutely. And that is something that I've been finding really hard with reading Twig so far is this kind of like long pause in between every two chapters.
Hmm.
I'm used to it. I'm a quick reader usually, and I'm used to just burning through a novel and this has been difficult
Sure.
uh, to to keep things in mind, to keep things in focus, and I guess to recognize where things have been alluded to before. I've caught myself a couple times, for example, being like, "Oh, this means that so and so has happened," and it's like this was explicitly mentioned to us 4 arcs back, but this was 2 months
Yes.
ago. Yeah,
Yeah. Maybe one of our New Year's resolutions can be to try and get back on track if our schedules allow.
I would love that.
Yeah.
I would like that very much.
Let's see what we can do. No promises. No, nobody's getting their
I
hopes up
think
here.
we have learned our
Um,
lesson about making promises that we cannot keep.
um, but yeah, we definitely want to pick up the pace and have the story fresh in mind as we go along. So
Yeah,
we'll see what we can do.
yeah. So
Moving
this is the
into
start.
general thoughts.
Yeah, so this is the start of a new arc, which means we want to talk about the arc title, which is Lips Sealed.
What does lip sealed mean to you, Tommy?
So the first real, like, obvious definition of lips sealed is a closed mouth, nothing, no words coming out, secrets are kept.
Yeah.
And that obviously immediately plays into quite a bit of what happens in these first arcs, or this first chapters of the arc. Um, we have the entrance to the bowels being sealed, and we have the introduction of the monster Sub Rosa, the actual definition of which means kept in secret, which is lips sealed.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
I had a feeling you would look that up.
It was, yeah, I just, it's, should I not have? Did you?
No. I was wondering if I would get to tell you what it meant, or if you would look it up yourself. And I was like, he's
Okay.
probably going to look it up too.
Yep. um,
One thing that I thought was interesting is last arc was Cat Out of the Bag,
yeah.
which is pretty much the exact opposite
Exact
of Lip
opposite
Sealed.
here.
So
Which
last
is
time we had a bunch of secrets being revealed, and so this arc seems like it'll be about secrets not being revealed.
and it's kind of, as you point out, what those there's already a bunch of secrets that we're anticipating revelations for.
Mm-hmm.
And if this arc title is telling us anything, is that we're not going to get any of those answers.
Yeah, well, there's kind of two examples of that, I think, because we have the secrets that we know,
Yeah.
which we don't want to be revealed. For example, the nature of the Lambsbridge project. Like they're all kind of tiptoeing around, talking to each other in the academy, in the orphanage,
Yeah.
to make sure that that secret doesn't get out among the other orphans.
Mhm.
Another one is the expiration dates, which we know and Cy notes, but Jamie and Gordon don't know and don't want to, and are, in this chapter
Explicitly
also
don't wanna know.
explicitly do not reveal the expiration dates, do not reveal the nature of the Lambsbridge project.
Yeah.
But then there's secrets that we don't know, like the whole deal with Sub Rosa,
Mhm.
where every time they find an answer, it comes with two questions, and we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and also you talk about the nature of the Lambsbridge project, and that kind of even comes up in their we'll talk again more about what they're doing in the bowels. But the Patchy, they talked to them, has an idea of who they are, a completely wrong idea, but the fact that the lambs are kind of a known, an open secret at this point throughout the academy because they're being used more
that's true.
is
The cat's a bit out of the bag, and the lips are not as sealed as
they
they might
were.
want them to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about the arc title?
That was all that I had come up with so far.
Okay, so I just wanted to move on to the first line of the arc,
Okay.
which is the room flooded with light, which is, Cy being woken up by Gordon, but kind of sets up the premise of the whole, at least the first arc, or the first chapter of the arc, where they're being sent to interrogate and audit all these scientists. It really has that image, or
Mm.
that
Their job is to shine a
visual.
light on what everyone's doing.
Yeah, but also even just like in a police procedural, that interrogation is always like the bright light in the face,
Mm.
disorient and all that. And that's kind of the image I got
Well,
on
that's
my
fun.
second read. Is just like, oh, Cy is being put immediately in that position that he's putting everyone else in later on in the chapters.
That's really fun. I like that. The last thing that we wanted to touch on before we got into the actual stuff of the story was something that Wildbow posted on the Discord about a month ago.
The Doof Discord, to clarify, not
Yes.
the
Yeah.
our pair, or not our parahumans. That's Reddit, but
And
the
like,
parahumans Discord. Yeah.
tiny mild spoilers for Worm and Pact, but not really, I guess. Um, what he says is this: Worm kind of goes A B.
Just to
Wait.
clarify, talking about the pacing of chapters and arcs and all that. Yeah, carry on. Because see, you're just going to start listing letters without giving context.
Sure. I don't even know where we were anymore. Okay.
Start from the top.
Reset. So, before we get started on the plot and summary section, we want to briefly mention something Wildbow posted in the Doof Discord about a month ago about the pacing of several of his works. And he says Worm has kind of goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, LMNO, P, Q, skip, W, X, Y, Z. Pact kind of goes A, B, C, D, F, G,
Yeah.
which is very
And
true.
then it is very true. And then Twig is spoilers.
Uh-huh.
And then kind of challenged us to guess a little bit of how this goes. And this kind of plays into something that we've mentioned in the past. I don't remember how far back, because as we mentioned, it's been a while. But that Wildbow mentioned that he was trying to do something interesting with the arc structure of Twig. So kind of challenged us, I guess, to predict how Twig goes. So if you want to take a crack at it, Dante.
I've got an idea of what I want to say. Do you have one?
Well, I kind of my guess is sort of so far, Twig has been Monster of the Week episodes for each arc, and then with this undercurrent of like a plot connecting everything together. So I am guessing it's going to be a good number of individual, A, B, C, D, and then at some point there's going to be a block of connective tissue that maybe is at the end, maybe is somewhere in the middle, and maybe repeats as a pattern. But I think for a while, at least for the initial bits, there's going to be a number of not disconnected arcs, but sort of unconnected.
Okay.
What about you?
So my thought was to be a little bit more smart aleck about it,
Okay.
uh, because, like you said, it is very Monster of the Week. It's very episodic. But I was thinking that the pacing is kind of like A, A, A,
Sure.
or maybe like different kind of A, like A and then like and then alpha, and then something like that, where it's just kind of like variations on a theme rather than
So
proceeding.
should I make fun of your Anglo-Canadianism here from the A?
I mean, you can if you want.
Yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from with this, but I'm sure at some point, I'm sure Twig is not just going to be that
No,
for
just like a
ever.
series of short stories.
Yeah. Oh, a series of dime store novels. We've already talked about that, right?
Yeah. Well, the dime store novels don't really have plots that proceed between them.
No, beyond, yeah.
Whereas this one, we haven't seen any plots proceeding between them really. I mean, like
But we've seen,
Percy, like the Percy thing resulted in Mary joining, but
yeah, but
Percy hasn't shown up since.
no, and that I feel happens in that kind of novel. You introduce a character, and then that character, especially if it's the first novel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that based on what we've seen so far, it very well could be a series of short stories.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think neither of us expects that to actually be the case.
But we could be, I don't know if happily surprised or unhappily surprised. We could be surprised by that.
Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
that was fun. Shall we move on to
let's.
the actual story with our plot
Yeah.
summary?
So, previously on Twig, Reverend Mauer, aka the Shepherd, has escaped. His influence over the people of Radham is gone, but the Lambs believe that he still has moles in the Academy. Dr. Briggs, the head of the Academy, has decided to make full use of the Lambsbridge project, implying that he intends to run them to the ground in order to find their weaknesses. And, finally, Sai has gotten the badges he wanted.
Woo! Most important thing that has happened this entire book so far.
If you ask Sai, that is true.
Yes. In Lip Sealed 3.1, the Lambs head to the Academy for their least favorite task ever, auditing every single project in order to find Mauer's potential moles.
Boring.
So they split up. Sai's team interviews some doctor with a patchy skin thing.
So, it's such a proof that Sai is bored. He doesn't even bother to name the just like, okay, this guy is a patch. I don't care.
Yep.
That is what his name is.
And they finish up with him. On the way back to the others, they pass by some creepy looking lady. Turns out that lady was the experiment of the doctor that the other team was interviewing, who got agitated and killed the doctor and escaped, triggering lockdown.
In Lips Sealed 3.2, Lillian freaks out and Sai comforts her. But actually, Jamie comforts her. But actually, Sai does. Ish. They decide to go down and track Sub Rosa, the project.
Which is the creepy lady, yes.
Yep. Jamie invents a word. not really relevant to the plot, but worth mentioning. They find Sub Rosa, a bunch of dead bodies, and running scientists. Sub Rosa opens some doors which should have activated security measures, but does not. The Lambs, plus Lillian, decide that they have to figure out what's going on, and then Sub Rosa releases a group of monsters that track and trap the Lambs. Uh,
Dum
and
dum dum.
no.
Yet another cliffhanger
Yep,
in Twig. So, uh, yeah, some exciting action going on in here,
yep.
and a
So,
lot of intrigue. What I thought was interesting is that, as far as we can tell, like we said before about the Monster of the Week style,
mhm.
none of this intrigue seems to have anything to do with the previous one. Like they're looking for Mauer related intrigue, and they found
Yeah,
some complete new different intrigue.
yeah, and it's interesting because we if we're talking about that sort of dime store novel, like that's the kind of like opening that you would find in, I don't know, like a Nancy Drew or Tom Swift that might allude to like the previous novel sort of,
Mm,
but does not really play into it at all.
yeah.
Like it's like, oh, there's a spy somewhere around here, you have to investigate, and then you find a plot that has nothing to do with that. It's just
Mhm.
the impetus to get you to the actual story.
Yes. But before all of this intrigue, we get so much boredom
Well,
and
boredom for Psy, not for us. It probably helps that we don't have to listen to him audit however many tens of thousands of scientists for the past ever. We get to jump into it
yeah,
right
see,
when
the thing is, knowing us, we probably would enjoy
I'm sure we would.
finding out what all those projects were. One thing that I thought uh, was interesting was Sai says that they were checking 10 to 20 a day out of thousands of relevant doctors, teachers, students, and staff members for 6 days a week for 3 months. That gives you about 1,000 staff interviewed
Sure.
so far. Out of thousands,
Yeah.
probably they're just getting started here.
Unless that's just Psy, you know, with being so bored, he's just hyperbole here on the sheer number they have left.
Yes, that's true. And Gordon did say that they're almost done, which
Yeah.
Cy denied.
hmm
So,
I
it's
would
hard to say, but
post Gordon there on that one, but yeah.
yeah, I don't know whether to believe either of them, but I do get the feeling that this is a no end in sight type situation.
Yeah, I mean, once you get to the end, you get to start over.
And the
Um,
other thing I thought was interesting was that they caught one. He says they only caught one.
but that's
And sure, that's disappointing, but also, like, who is this other mole? What were they up to? And how do they fit into this overall plan?
yep. Well, I'm sure we'll never find that out.
um,
Um, yeah, now, I'm kind of curious whether there's a structure to the order of how they're doing this. Are they going down in order of rank? Are they investigating? Is it alphabetically in the project list? Is it yeah? Is there a structure to this?
I
You know,
would guess it would be alphabetical or random or
I
something.
could see it being you go down org charts of each department or whatever. Start with the people who could do the most damage, and then go
Yeah,
down till you
you'd
hit the people who
think, but I just feel like that's a little bit more intelligence than I would credit the Academy with.
maybe yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. But anyway, the word of the audit has gotten out, as we said.
Yeah,
The guy, Dr. Patchy,
have
knows
heard
about the
about them.
audit before they get in. And, like, seriously, if they've interviewed 1,000 people over the last
How
three
could they
months, like,
possibly not
how good?
get it
Yes,
out?
exactly. Like, I'm sure it's everyone's saying, like, oh, have you gotten those creepy kids auditing you yet? Like,
They didn't sound like kids,
yeah.
but they looked like kids.
I mean, their cover was that they were pretending to be students
Yeah,
learning from
all the
all the
different
projects.
projects, but it's like, yeah, that's clearly bullshit.
I wonder if this is actually something that students do though, because if it is, then it could be a
Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Just the way that Dr. Patchy reacted was kind of it. If it happens, it doesn't happen as in depth as this. Maybe students will audit classes or whatever, but they won't It seems like the bowels is a place you don't go
yeah.
unless you have a real reason to be there,
Mhm.
and just auditing a professor or a doctor is not enough, I
Yeah. Or
think.
also, it's like, oh, I haven't been audited in 5 years, or not audited, but like visited
Yeah.
by students in like 5 years. Oh, I had one last week. It was really
And all of
fun.
a
And then,
sudden,
all,
everybody,
yes,
yeah,
everybody's being visited by the exact same people.
yeah, clearly not as subtle as they want to think they are.
No. But the fact that only one particularly clever person is noticed after 3 months, that's actually not too bad.
I suppose. I mean, it might be a testament to. Well, it's either testament to them being good at keeping secrets, or a testament to the like culture of the academy where people don't talk.
Sure. Yeah. They don't want to talk because uh, if people find out what they're up to, then
Yeah.
they'll be sabotaged or their competitive edge will be gone. A lot of incentive for keeping their lips sealed.
Well, I mean, I'm sure you said that intentionally, but
of
no, your reaction is
course.
making me think
Of
that you did
course I
not.
said that intentionally.
Now clearly you did not. So
uh, anyway, so
yeah,
then Sub Rosa escapes, and
yep,
I love what how Helen describes it. She says, "The doctor." Oh, I forget the exact quote. The doctor agitated the monster, and then the monster
monster.
agitated his insides.
Yeah, and then or Lillian's like, "Don't that's awful." Like, I'm just does not react well to that. But yeah, that was a really. There were a few like really funny lines in this
Yes,
these chapters.
yes. But I want to talk about the lockdown itself for a minute because we kind of foreshadowed it a few chapters ago when they
Yeah,
were down here to interview. I think they were down here to interview that guy about Whiskers.
yeah, yep. They whatever the frat bro guy.
Yeah. And they were talking about the lockdown procedures and how if something goes wrong, everything will be locked down and how it all works. And so that was some good foreshadowing, but it paid off so fast.
Immediately.
Yes.
I was going to say maybe if we were reading it at the pace Wildbow published it, but we kind of already are reading it at that pace,
I mean,
probably
he
slower.
updates faster than
Yeah,
two
we've been
chapters a
going.
month.
Yeah, I do wonder whether I don't remember, let's say, what level they were on for that, like how far down in the bowels they had to go
Sure.
to interrogate Mustache Man. I don't remember his name.
It doesn't matter. Whatever his name was. Steve, Jake.
Definitely not either of those names. But and then you brought up that Lillian calls it the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
And
and it's only arc 3. Like
so like
we've
there are
we've
clearly
already hit the peak stakes of this story,
yeah, it's
and
only
it's
downhill
all
from here.
downhill.
Just easy living for
hmm
Psy for the next 16 arcs or however many there are.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, it goes from incredibly boring to worst case scenario in
No time.
no time at all. So anyway, they're in the worst case scenario. Everything like it can't get worse from here. Like, how do you think that? How what do you think of being in the third arc and having all of this payoff with the worst case scenario right here? What where do you think this is
Well, this is telling me that is not actually the worst case
going?
scenario.
That's the boring
And
answer.
of course, it's the boring answer, but it is the realistic answer.
True.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a prediction to what can be worse besides, this turning into like a full-fledged loose reproducing bio-horror zombie apocalypse type of thing.
Maybe this is a zombie apocalypse story,
I
and
mean,
it's just taken us this long to get to.
these two chapters very much have that feel of like investigating a lab at the beginning of a zombie movie or something, some kind of zombie
Mhm.
fiction with everything getting loose and going wrong and they're just trapped.
Yes. Although in this case, they're not likely to be turned if they get attacked, but
No, but yeah, it has that same
it
kind
does
of
have,
like
yes.
Resident Evil or Dead Space or like
It's very
almost,
fun. I like it a
yeah.
lot.
Oh, I'm super excited about this arc.
Uh, so then, essentially, what we're left with is this mystery. We have, like, they
Mhm.
decide They have to figure out what's going on with Sub Rosa, and we get a little bit of hints. We know that it seems to not have anything to power.
Probably not.
We know
Um,
that the we know that there's something to do with resurrecting the dead.
yep. Well, and what I thought was interesting is not just resurrecting the dead, but rebuilding brain matter and muscular matter that deteriorated during, the between death and resurrection.
Hmm.
And I think we might talk about this later on in the monster corner. I don't remember if I put that in our notes, but just the fact that like whatever comes back is not going to be the same
Right.
because memories and stuff are encoded in dead cells, and those cells are gone. New ones aren't going to have those things. So
Yes.
that kind of definitely also made me think of that kind of zombie fiction where the thing that comes back not the same.
Hmm. Right. It's not her anymore. Like, let her
Whoever she
go.
was,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, definitely. One I thought was interesting was like we kind of talked about the lips sealed thing with Sub
Hmm.
Rosa's name, meaning in secret. Um, and she has a lot of secrets. I kind of thought it was interesting. Like she literally has her lips sealed;
Yeah,
they're stapled shut.
yeah.
But the whole purpose apparently of her is to try and find a way
Interrogate
to
the dead.
interrogate the dead.
Yeah,
The very famous saying "dead men tell no tales" is
yeah,
like the most lip sealed
yeah,
concept
yeah.
there
It-
is.
which
So
just makes me feel like, I mean, we get some allusion to the fact that what the when Dr. Patchy talks about the purpose of his experiment, um, he, I think it was Lillian says, "Oh, it's a weapon," or
mhm,
and says, "No, that's just a lie you tell them so that they fund you and do her thing." And I think that is alluding directly to the fact that whatever the stated purpose of Sub Rosa was, it has nothing to do with the actual purpose in the actual experiment.
mhm,
You know,
yes,
the it's feeding us that bit of knowledge that we've kind of alluded to that in the past in this podcast. Just like these, the academy is going to fund weapons and all that, and people are going to just say whatever
yep,
and like point to whatever possible sort of weapon related
yep,
association to whatever their passion project is.
yes,
So yeah, I'm
yeah,
certain that whatever we get the fact that Shipman, who I think Shipman was the name of
I
the
think so.
doctor
Yeah.
who, yeah, is built her and did whatever in secret. And if it was just a regular project, then he would have no reason to do that. So it implies to me that there's a reason for him to keep her specifically
Hmm.
hidden. I don't know if it's a relationship with maybe a someone who died that he really liked or cared about or something
So
much grimmer
you're
or
thinking he's
darker.
trying to like resurrect a specific person rather than
Yes,
okay,
I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that. But like,
yeah,
I don't know necessarily where where it's
hmm,
going.
hmm, yeah. I think that's interesting. So you're pointing out a difference between what Shipman says he's doing and what
Yeah,
Shipman is actually doing.
absolutely.
And what I noticed was that there's a difference, or presumably a difference, between what Shipman intends Sub Rosa to do and
And
what
look,
Sub Rosa intends to
oh,
do.
absolutely.
Because we discover here that there's more to her than just feral monster. She's going down and
She's strategizing and
mhm, and she's pulled out this group of other projects. I don't
yeah,
remember whether they were like one project of multiple
it
subjects or
seemed
multiple
to
subjects.
be one project of multiple subjects just because they
They
all have
certainly
like
seem to be the same.
yeah.
Um, but she definitely has some plan, some intention.
And not just that, she clearly knows what she's doing in the bowels.
Hmm.
Like even if it's just even if her brain is reconstructing stuff, she clearly has some memory of having been in there at some point, and
Hmm.
whether she was drawn from that pool of other ex-cons or if she's someone else,
Hmm.
she has been there long enough that she knows what's going on.
I wonder if this is perhaps some success of Shipman's stated project, where she
Hmm.
remembers from when she was alive who
Yeah,
these people are and where they are.
Yeah.
rather than like what she's experienced since being reconstructed.
This is just coming to me real quick right now, so bear with me. I'm kind of constructing it as we go. But the fact that she knows how to operate in the bowels and do things without activating the security systems suggests to me that she was maybe in a past life before she was Sub Rosa, a doctor or a scientist in the bowels themselves. So maybe she's going back to, she died in whatever, maybe either shipment killed her for the project or she died as a byproduct. And she's going back to her own project.
That would be an interesting twist. Anyway, there's a lot of layers
There's
of.
a lot of, yeah, and we have no answers yet.
No, we
Yeah,
could probably come up with dozens of possible
possibilities. Yeah,
uh,
and I don't know how
situations,
interesting it is for
and
people.
all of them will be wrong.
Oh, probably. World building.
Yes. So some general thoughts. Actually, why don't you start because this was
Sure.
your.
So we've talked about in the past how the world feels like that sort of soot-soaked Victorian aesthetic, except we have plants instead of factories. And
Yes.
this line here kind of really paints that perfectly. It's the same colors as that, and despite it being plants, there is no green. So past the Rain Street windows, the trees and the leafy branches on buildings were a breadth of colors, mostly red and blacks for the buildings. So a breadth of color spans red to black. There is no, I don't think. I assume the spread of colors does not include blues or yellows or purples or anything. It's
Oh,
just
I definitely thought it did. That it was like all the colors, but mostly red and reddish black.
Oh, see, I was picturing it just goes from
Just
like
completely
reds to
monochrome.
maroons to like brown to like dark brown to grays to blacks. Like
Sure.
that. Yeah, I pictured it very monochrome.
That's interesting. One thing that I thought was interesting was the curtain in Sai's room is green,
Hmm.
and once the curtain is pulled aside, he says the color green was all but gone from.
Which is
So even if it is all of the colors, there's definitely no green.
yeah, which I think is why I assume there's no other color. It's just the reds to like dark reds to grays to blacks to like
Sure.
things in between. Um, and I thought especially interesting because there's that contrast of just the text telling us, oh, it's plants everywhere, but there is no green.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we've remarked on that before, but
Yeah,
it's just such a great way of putting it, I think.
yeah, absolutely. Um, and the other tiny bit of world building, I wasn't sure where to put this line,
Sure.
just because it was just a funny line, but I couldn't figure out where to put it. And it's after they're tracking Sub Rosa down in the bowels. It says outside the door, a long train of people in lab coats ran down the length of the hallways, shouted instructions flying between them. And I just thought it sounded really funny. This idea of just all these scientists used to people listening to what they're doing, just yelling orders to each other, and nobody listening to anybody else. Just all just like panicked and like
Yep.
telling everybody else to like do things and stop and just
Okay,
it
so
made me
now you have. So when I read that, it was funny, but now you've essentially planted in my mind this idea of like a train of people, like specifically single file, passing instructions down the line. So it's like they're all running in single file. He's like, turn left, turn left, turn left, turn left, turn left.
just like a game of telephone.
Yes.
Some guy just like stumbles, turn right, and half a block.
So yes,
Mm,
delightful.
yeah. I did not picture that.
I didn't either until just now.
Yeah.
Um, we did get a couple of interesting tidbits about the food in this universe.
Hmm.
We have grilled tree jerky, which
Yeah.
Sai says refers to as good food along with bacon.
Yeah. Unlike oatmeal, which is cold, boring food,
Yes, and
and
gross.
toast and gross. I mean, oatmeal is just so classically orphanage food that like even if it's good, it's just bad
Yes, yes,
orphanage food.
yes. But I
It's
don't know.
Oliver
Apparently,
Twist.
this orphanage gets tree jerky, and apparently, tree jerky is pretty good. So,
Yeah, Oliver Twist, when he's asking for more, is not asking for gruel. He's asking for more tree jerky.
yes.
Um,
And he also mentions a mystery fruit, which is just something the Academy has
yeah,
handed out as a new food substance they've invented for the public to try.
that made me think that line of an article I read. It's like a sci-fi version of the fact that like agriculture universities every so often release new varietals of apples
Okay.
that are just better apples for whatever reason that they've bred over time, and it
Yeah.
just this is like the sci-fi version of that.
Yes. But in that case, they're not trying to like improve the product and see if the people are interested in purchasing it. They're literally just like,
Here's a
here's
new
a mystery fruit. Eat it and let us know what happens.
if you grow legs and turn into a bomb. Excellent, we can weaponize this.
Yes.
Extra legs, presumably.
Yes, specifically the extra legs. If they turn into a bomb but don't grow extra legs,
No, that's
completely
a problem.
useless.
It's useless because then you're just bombing yourself. You
Yeah.
want them to run off into the enemy territory.
Mhm. And I think Psy classifies the mystery fruit as boring food.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. So mystery fruit, not as good as grilled tree jerky.
Still, presumably better than oatmeal.
Yes. That's not hard.
Well, there's some good oatmeal out there.
Yeah. And speaking of the breakfast food at Lambsbridge, in terms of locations, the
Hmm.
breakfast routine at the Lambsbridge orphanage is a pretty big chunk of this chapter. Um, we get a lot of a more
Slice of
clear
life.
picture of how life, yeah, exactly, how life is at the orphanage.
Yeah. And I want to point out, I don't know if you actually brought it up later. Let me do a real quick scan of the notes again. Nope. Um, Unrelated to the actual breakfast routine, Rick seems to be suspecting something about Sai, or Sai is suspecting something about Rick here, which I just wanted to note that in case it comes up again. Uh,
Oh, that's true. Yes,
that, yeah,
we'll
just,
need to keep an eye on him.
yeah, just keep an eye on that.
Yes. The other location we spend a lot of time in, of course, is the bowels of the academy again. Um, I wasn't really sure how much of what we learn about the bowels is new from last time we were in the
I
bowels.
don't I don't know either, but like we definitely get a bit more about its security and about the structure, but I don't know. Yeah,
Mhm.
like you said, I don't know if any of that is actually new.
I think that the thing that stuck out to me the most about the bowels as a setting was
Hmm.
the layout of this staircase they're talking about,
Yeah,
where it's like this spiral staircase where every so often it'll have a corridor going off in this direction or that direction.
yeah,
And even like the floors are not on the same level. Like if you're on the second level, it's like here's one wing of the second level, and then you go down a bit further, and there's another wing of the second level, and then you go down a lot further to get to the third level.
hmm yeah. It's. I'm trying to think of the right word. It's not coming, so I'll cut
Eh,
that.
that's
No,
fine.
no. There's a word that that if it comes back, I'll go back to it. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's interesting that the structure is. It seems to have just been haphazardly dug
Sure. I'm sort of
away.
imagining it like my image of like the grand staircase in a university building is
Hmm.
usually pretty nice, right? Like
Oh yeah,
even if they're like one of those cheap buildings, it's like, well,
this is the place people walk in and look at, and
yeah, and like the ugly concrete steps are like at the back or
yeah,
to the sides or whatever. But this one, like, I don't think it said that it was like plain and ugly or whatever, but I essentially just imagined like a concrete shaft going like straight down into the earth and just
what
like
I
a rickety
picture,
staircase going around it.
yeah, what I picture is kind of like an ant's nest, or like that kind of thing, like dug down. It's like yeah, a
Yeah, I
concrete
can see
version of
that.
that, but
Hmm.
like there's it's if there is a kind of logic to it, it's not a logic that a human would just think of
Sure, they just kind of
immediately.
tunnel off in some direction when they feel like it, and
Yeah, and to them, I'm sure it makes sense, but
mhm,
it's not a sense that makes sense to us.
yeah. And I'm sort of thinking, like, this is the prime location for somebody to, like, fall off the stairs and plummet to their
Yeah.
death down the center of this shaft.
So is that your prediction to how Sub Rosa is dealt with?
I don't remember, so I can safely predict that it may very well happen that way.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't really remember much
Mhm.
about of what, like, it was a long time ago that I read this, and I remember,
Yeah.
like, broad strokes. I remembered that Sub Rosa was a character here and
Okay.
what bit of what her deal was, but that's
Not the.
pretty much all I remember about this arc, so
Yeah.
I'm
Oy.
almost as blind as you are here.
Yeah. Again, I am super excited to be going into this blind. I just feel a lot less insightful.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. So on the subject of monsters like Sub Rosa, it is time for our most monstrous segment of the podcast, Monster Corner. And we received a soundbite for our Totally a Contest.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if playing it here will actually embed itself into the audio. Otherwise,
If
you're going to have to
not,
do
I
some.
will add it.
Yes.
And then it will sound to our audience as if it has worked.
Yes. Perfect.
Perfect.
So that is from Megafire, singing a bit from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And just to make sure that I'm doing all this citations properly, who wrote that song?
Danny Elfman, I think. Yep. Nope, that's wrong. Music. Yep, it is Danny Elfman.
Composed and written by Danny Elfman.
Yep. And also, fun fact,
Mm-hmm.
not a movie directed by Tim Burton, despite being associated with him very closely.
Oh, really?
Yep.
What's the deal with that?
He's a producer on it.
Okay. Interesting. Well,
He gets associated with it unfairly. It is
I mean, isn't that the name of the movie? Is like Tim Burton's The Halloween Before, or The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Yeah, I think you're right. Also, yeah, but yeah, he just got his name tacked on for producing it rather than Henry Selick, who directed it. Also, apparently directed James and the Giant Peach and
Okay, I haven't
Fantastic
seen
Mr.
that.
Fox. Oh, you have not seen? Oh,
I've read the
wait.
book.
Apparently, he also directed.
I have seen that. I have
Yeah,
not
he
read
directed
that.
Coraline. Oh, you have not read that? That's a good book. Interesting. Guess he has a style here.
Mm-hmm. It's a fun style.
Yeah, for sure. I did not realize that was what he. Also, apparently, Pete's Dragon in 1977. Wow, that's a ways back.
Yeah, that's one of the less appreciated Disney films, I think.
Yeah, well, he didn't direct that. He was, I guess, worked on it before
Okay.
his time. That's wild. Sorry, I'm just clicking Wikipedia spiral right now. Pete's Dragon in
Forget
1977.
Twig. Let's learn a bit about
Pete's Dragon.
yes.
The project was initially conceived in 1957, and it was shelved. Like they worked, yeah, like on and off for 20 years.
Really, that long?
And it was released in 1977. Wow. Anyway,
I feel
Twig.
like I used to know an interesting fact about that movie, but
It has gone.
it has gone.
Do you know any boring facts about that movie instead?
Just the obvious ones. There is a movie called Pete's Dragon.
That is
Fun fact.
mildly interesting. Yeah. Anyway, Monster Corner.
Boys and girls of every age, wouldn't you like to see something strange?
All right.
Right.
So the first monsters that we encounter are the lambs. Sometimes they count as monsters. Sometimes we don't count them as monsters. But
we're counting them as monsters in this episode specifically because
Dr. Patchy
knows about them as monsters.
Yes. He says, I've heard you're adults in kids' bodies. Oh, I have to also mention that Kimberly Dauber does a hilarious voice for Dr. Patchy. He sounds like this.
There is no textual evidence for that, but I love it, and I will... If Patchy comes up again, I am certain that is what is going to be.
I've heard you're adults in kids' bodies. And Sai, interestingly, says that's wrong, but it's close enough to be problematic.
Yeah. Well, I think it was... I thought he was more reacting to the fact that Patchy knows they exist.
Rather than knowing what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, it's technically not true, but it almost might as well be. Like, if you treat Sai as if he's an adult in a kid's body, you're pretty much gonna have as much insight into his character as...
Absolutely, yeah. Just don't underestimate him, basically.
Yes. But I also thought it was funny because earlier in the chapter, when Gordon was trying to get Cy out, the whole thing about you're being a baby and you're not acting like an adult either.
Yeah. Well, just like you're acting like a baby is such a way that you get a little kid to do something. Like,
yes.
you're acting like a baby is not something that an adult is going to care about.
No.
Like, whatever. But it's something that, like, someone who was very recently a baby cares about.
Yes. But also, like, the chapter in which Gordon has this discussion with Cy is also the chapter where somebody says that they're adults in kids' bodies.
Yeah,
and I thought that was a funny...
that is true. I didn't make that connection there.
A funny connection.
Yeah.
So the next monster they come across is Dr. Patchy's Chimera.
Which is this horrific chimera of a bunch of different creatures, a bunch of heads sticking out and areas of fur and skin and scales and feathers and all that just over random bits of its body, just patchy like it's a maker.
Yes.
And
which is actually really interesting because, like, the whole point of it is, like, it's not supposed to do anything. It's just supposed to keep living.
Be a test bed for
when they add stuff. It's like, how many heads can I add on to this creature and have it still live?
Well, what I thought was especially interesting about this chimera is that visually it just looks like someone used Frankenstein-y technology magic to sew a bunch of animals together to create a creature. However, its stated purpose is not to do that, but is to have the DNA of two creatures and of its species and be able to impregnate itself and reproduce, not a clone, but a fully, I don't remember the word offhand, but like a creature that's created from two parents from one parent.
I think that the idea is that both of them are true. Like,
yeah, but I mean, it doesn't. It just
he's trying to see what the limits are.
Yeah.
Of creating life. Can we combine the two DNAs? That's why it's like, it's not a chimera in the sense of the creature. It's a chimera in that it has two different DNAs.
He has this creature that's like, okay, this entity is able to uses, has its whatever slight variation in its sperm and its ova, and like whatever 2 bits like from the egg, and then it combines them and it doesn't create a clone. It just has as if it was two creatures. And I'm going to take this thing and I'm just going to sew patches of skin and head and feathers on it.
Yeah.
And hope that it survives.
Yeah.
That just sounds sadistic.
Well, yeah. Well, that's why. Isn't that why Jamie says afterwards? He's like, I don't like this, and Lillian is like, "Oh, you're such a sensitive soul." Or not Lillian, Mary.
I thought the 2 projects or 2 like experiments was one. But if you,
well,
you're saying
like, it is one in that it is one creature.
Yeah, but it's just
he says
one creature that has a purpose and then is being tortured on top of that.
Okay, so what he says the purpose of this experiment is to do research on the ratios of life. Yeah. So Dr. Patchy is literally the only scientist in this entire academy because everyone's trying to engineer these things. And he's like, no. Engineering is fine, but I'm trying to get to the bottom of the theoretical stuff. This idea that so long as we keep the ratios intact, we can do pretty much whatever we want. Yeah. And so his experiment, at least the way I understand it, is we'll take this creature whose ratios are all in balance, and we'll see if we can tack on some other thing while respecting the ratios.
Push the ratios as much as possible.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so all of this splicing and whatever, it's like how much of this, mishmash of fur and feathers and heads and whatever can we add on while still maintaining the ratios? Do the ratios still hold up in this very convoluted and complex situation? And then his final crowning achievement will be to find out whether it can be viable, reproductively viable, in balance and have offspring that are in balance with the ratios.
Well, presumably the offspring don't have the random sewn-on heads and legs and shit.
No, if they're added like
not into the DNA. I guess that was my
Yeah, because he says it
hang up.
has two DNAs, and unless he's
Yeah,
modifying the DNA, then it's not going to end up
yeah.
actually
Like
like
if
that.
he's just that was my issue. Is like he's not just making a Frankenstein animal. He's making a Frankenstein animal and also modify its DNA.
Yes, but he's doing both or either specifically because he's
Yeah,
seeing he's doing actual science. He's trying to see, he's making his hypotheses and seeing whether tinkering with this creature will confirm or deny his hypothesis. So,
yeah.
aside from the horrible pain this is inflicting on the creature, this is actually,
Real
some
science.
actual science going on here, which
However, I'm
is
not sure an ethics board would approve of this one.
yes.
Yep.
So then, our next monster that I wanted to bring up is a little Easter egg. I think a reference to Worm.
Worm spoilers.
Yeah, Worm spoilers that there is a bug girl in Worm. I think they mentioned that in the very first chapter. Anyway,
No, no, no. That comes up out halfway.
um, so the quote is Jamie says, "Our scientist here," talking about Shipman, I think.
I think it
Our
was. Yeah.
scientist here has relatives. You guys interviewed one a month ago. Bug swarms, tranquilizing, and anesthetic venom. I remember, Lillian said. The girl, right? I liked her. That's obviously Skitter.
Oh, of course. Now we have to wonder whether it is a Bonesaw experiment. You know what Bonesaw was planning, or if it was
No, what it is a scientist who really enjoyed Doll Man and the attack from outer
the
space or
insect
whatever it's
queen or
called,
whatever it was.
and
Yeah.
decided to build one of the characters from that story in his lab.
Yep. So clearly, it's just going to take her to Radom Comic Con.
Oh
To
yeah. I'm yes,
yeah,
amazing. Anyway, I just love that. It was just a little
yeah.
thing, but
Just
so
fun,
good.
fun little Easter egg. Yep. And then
We'll
there's
skip over
also
Sub Rosa for a moment and talk about these.
well, I moved that just real quick because I figured ending with Sub Rosa made
Yeah.
sense. So yeah, so Sub Rosa releases these experiments that are presumably one experiment. And they are malnourished ex-cons with fish tanks grafted to their backs and spears preventing them from using their arms as arms and not just stabby things. So we don't know anything about them besides the fact that they look fragile, have some kind of like fish tank with an octopus eel hybrid in their back, and that they are hunting the lambs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very mysterious and very creepy and gross.
Oh yeah, like they are the zombies of this zombie horror lab
Yes.
so far.
Yes. Hopefully they don't, attack people and
Turn them into
fuse a glass case to their back and shove spears
yeah,
down their arms and legs.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
very unpleasant sort of people. And also a bit of a revelation that they're experimenting on convicts.
yeah, I mean that's to be expected.
Yeah, we kind of thought they might be doing something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's
but
a
now we have
fair.
confirmation, and yeah, it's not good.
No,
It's not
no,
good.
no. Again, ethics.
Hmm.
What are those?
Well, ethics, and also like they're imminently under attack by these creatures. So
Well, okay, sure. But if there were ethics
let's
involved,
survive first, and then talk about the ethics.
yeah. So yeah, we don't know anything about these people yet, these monsters yet, but I'm sure we're going to find out real soon.
The octopus in the back kind of reminds me of that octopus creature from Boyle.
Yep, I had that same thought.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if
I don't know if all of our listeners listened to our discussion about Boyle. That was our bonus episode we did a long time ago. But yeah, one of the experiments in that was this little octopus creature that I don't even really remember what its deal was. Like it could like sit
it
on
was,
her arm and do
and she can
things.
swallow it. I remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, having this like octopusy thing sitting in a knapsack sort of definitely put me in mind of like something like that. So
Definitely.
whether or not that will still be comparable after we learn more about what these guys are up to remains to be seen.
Yeah. What was the octopus's name? It had a name.
I'm gonna look it up.
It was a ring-shaped octopus. I remember that.
Yes. Dolores.
Dolores.
Somewhere between an octopus and a jellyfish, she had an open ring for a head, smarter than most would consider. I pointed, and Dolores reached out a prehensile limb, seized the book, and pulled it back to me. It wasn't strong. So it's like, yeah, just a little useful friend
Yeah.
to have in a knapsack.
Definitely. I'm sure she'd be less of a useful friend were she in a jar of urine yellow liquid grafted to your back.
I mean, that's just the color of it. It's clearly,
Not urine.
a delightful combination of nutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually,
Yeah.
you know what it probably is? This is like the octopus is the experiment, and these are just like human mech suits that they've built for them.
Out of the corpses of.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. It was going to be the corpses, but a living body was just so much better for the octopus.
Yes.
So,
in fact, that's specifically what the octopuses requested.
yeah.
They said, "We demand living bodies. None of these corpses that you've been giving us before. They don't.
the adrenaline and
we don't
pain.
Appreciate the shambling gait."
Yes. The taste of fear is delicious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Turns out the academy is actually run by these octopus creatures.
These people are the first generation.
Yes.
Dr. Briggs is actually, that scene in Men in Black where the creature, the face opens up and it's just a little alien driving a body. That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
There, we've solved everything.
Twig's done. Podcast over.
Now, back to Nightmare Before Christmas. No, I'm kidding. All right, so now I need to talk about Sub Rosa.
Yeah.
We've talked about her name. We've talked about the weird having her mouth stapled shut despite being the purpose of her being to interrogate and get information out of her. Not sure how she's supposed to answer questions with her mouth stapled shut, but
yeah. Can we also talk about the way she looks?
Yep.
Like, she is taller than a tall man, I think was the exact quote.
Yes.
They
also said like 1.5 times the height of an average woman.
Yeah. She has wearing a dress of skin grafted to her.
Yes. Or, well, the way I understood it was like literally her own skin just kind of grown out long and wrapped around her.
Yeah.
Taddy Bojangles style.
There was the word there was the word grafted.
Okay. It definitely had a lot of scar tissue.
Yeah. And there were the tubes going from her belly to her neck or to her face.
Just kind of tubes all over, I got.
Was it? Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
I thought it was interesting. They said like her face was normal, and then
that was like
then start talking. Yes, and then start talking about all the ways the face was not normal at all.
Yeah. And I definitely wanted to point out specifically that the tubes, the phrasing of the tubing was described as black and yellow bile.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if that is telling us something about the character of thing. If you go by the sort of medieval four humors.
Yes. I think we talked about that.
We have in the past.
A previous episode.
Yeah. So
black and yellow bile would be like choleric / melancholic.
Yeah. And then doesn't have, so either the fact that she only has those is, she's going to have an excess of those emotions or characteristics, or the fact that she's missing the others is going to mean that, she has those in excess. I don't know. But just, I'm curious whether this is something I want to follow along as we go through this arc to see if it plays into who she is and what we get from her.
Yes. So if I remember correctly, the whole idea of choleric melancholic would be someone who doesn't let go of their feelings in a hurry.
Yeah.
Like, choleric would be, they get upset quickly and they hold on to it. Melancholic would be they get upset slowly and hold on to it. But either way, she's going to be holding on to these emotions, whether they're good emotions or bad emotions. She's going to be holding a grudge for a while. So...
Well, I mean, and we kind of, not necessarily a grudge, but like we saw that she went and released, and presumably the people that she released, she has some connection to.
Yeah.
So she's holding on to something.
We're assuming that, I think.
Well, I mean,
it seems obvious, but I think...
Yeah, I guess you're right, but it seems like she's going with intent.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, well, it's definitely intentional.
Yeah,
Like there's some sort of reason why she went, and
and where she went, and the
yes.
fact that, I mean, the fact that she did not target Cy and Lillian and Mary, was it?
Mhm.
Or Cy, Jamie, and Mary
Yeah.
on the stairs. She just whatever, and she has murdered, I think, all the other scientists she's come across.
I don't think she has murdered all of them, but she's definitely murdered enough of them to have everyone scared for their lives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like even if she had gotten loose and been super friendly to everybody, the scientists would still be terrified of the fact that an experiment got loose.
Yes, yes. As Lillian pointed out, it's a worst case scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, so I'm curious whether she was, we talked about the stated purpose of Sub Rosa. I wonder if Sub Rosa volunteered before her death, or if she was, voluntold, or
Mhm. I don't
where
remember.
she
Yeah.
comes from, uh, where the person who becomes Sub Rosa comes from. Whether
Mhm.
she, we talked a little, or I mentioned earlier that maybe she was one of the experiments, maybe she was a
You,
scientist running
you
her
thought
own
maybe she was
experiments, or
someone that Dr.
Shipman
Shipman was
knew,
close
yeah,
to. Yeah,
someone he killed to get her the knowledge on the experiments.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure we'll find out.
Many
Um,
mysteries, and her lips are sealed, so might be a tough time getting those out. I believe the next bit was yours.
which on the security measures bit?
Yeah, we can skip it if you don't think it's any.
I mean, I think it just goes into what we were saying before, or what I was saying, just like she knows things that she shouldn't.
Oh no, I meant the thing next after that.
Oh, that's smarter than expected.
No, the thing after that. After that, the good general rule.
Oh. Sorry, I thought we were still. Yeah, okay. I just thought it
I
was
thought we were done with
interesting.
Sub Rosa. Anyway,
Sorry. Yeah, just there's an interesting statement that Mary, I think, says, um, that she's looking at the ceiling to make sure that monsters don't get the drop on her. And I think that makes sense. It's something that comes up in a lot of different things that, like, oh no, people just aren't used to looking up.
yeah,
And it makes sense that Percy, who created Mary and her brothers to like fight the Academy, would have trained them to look up,
yeah,
because that's a place that it's a good place to hide monsters and all,
yeah. There's a whole department dedicated to sealing monsters.
to drop bears. Yeah. All right. And then I caught a. It's not really a historical reference, really, but I liked the fact that they're using actual historical, like the description of this thing to make toast during the breakfast segment
Okay,
sounds very sci-fi, nonsensical, whatever. Reaching over the side of the oven to grab a long-handled wired setup that had toast trapped within its lattice, she popped the wire configuration open and dumped the toast onto my plate. And that's just a historical toaster. It's like a great thing that holds bread on a long stick that you stick in the fire and
okay.
pull out when your toast is ready. It's what people used to use for toasters. I just thought it was fun that this description makes it sound like some sci-fi contraption that
Yes, it
makes
kind of does.
toast.
But yes,
Like it's about as bare bones basic as it could be.
it's not some little mechanism where you push the button and,
Exactly. It pops out
or
toast later.
as our usual suspect is, it's not like a little slug that toasts
Digests the
the.
bread and poops toast out.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Um,
So
move on to characters.
characters, and as usual, we start with Sylvester, who has gotten his badges.
And is the story's over.
Yep.
We're done with Cy. So let's move on to Mary, the new protagonist of no, but yeah, Cy has his badge. So I wanted to point out that I think Gordon describes Cy as a sponge.
Okay.
And I think that's a hint to the point of Wyvern.
Ah,
We,
yes.
we know that like Wyvern is meant to sort of fill in a role, fill that gap,
Hmm.
and him being a sponge of the people around him kind of, I think we've gotten talks about that before, and it fits into Sai like wanting to manipulate people, and that he wants, if he wants to learn how to manipulate, he wants to be a good manipulator, he needs the people around him to be competent at it.
Sure. I
And
feel
like
like it's kind of an opposite in it as well.
yeah,
Because, like, if Sai is a sponge, he's absorbing the tendencies of the people around him. But what he wants to do is push out his intentions into the people around him.
yeah,
So, I don't know. It's kind of like cross purposes, I feel. But,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, I don't necessarily know where that anything, just it's just a bit more information
Hmm.
about Sai, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sai also points out something similar about Lillian, I believe, near the end of the chapter, where he says, like, where she's talking about how she doesn't want to be afraid anymore. And he says,
We need
honestly,
you to
like,
be afraid.
yeah, like, the more you hang out with us, the more you kind of absorb our tendencies, and that's not necessarily a good thing.
He couches it in like a you become less useful to us, but that's kind of not like you get the vibe that's not where he's going. He actually is saying to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was surprisingly sweet of Sai to Lillian.
It would have been if he hadn't worded it as
Yeah,
clinically as he had, yes.
yeah.
Anyway, he is kind of like a butt these two chapters.
I got the opposite feel of that. I thought he was like about as genuinely nice as he is in these chapters. But
Yeah, well, like he's talking to Jamie, and Jamie is like, "I don't know how I feel about this chimera monster of Doctor Patchy."
yeah,
And Sai is like, "You're a wuss." And like later, Lillian is having a meltdown, and he just calls her a dumbass. And he's like,
but he
Sai
it,
is just like not being empathetic at all to anyone. He's just like
I don't know if he's not being
being
empathetic. He his interaction with Allie, the whatever 6-year-old girl, is
okay.
one
Yeah,
where
that's
he's
true.
he's and it's at least the second time, maybe more, where we've seen him be self-servingly a little bit, but overall nice to a younger child.
That's true. And he also complimented Miss Earl's haircut
Yeah,
without us seeing any ulterior motive
yet potentially, but yeah,
yet.
like I
Yeah,
think and I don't know if this is because he is further away from an appointment, and maybe the base personality of Psy pre-Wyvern or without Wyvern is emerging a little bit, or
yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know how much Wyvern. I guess I'm assuming that Wyvern is something that is being done to him on a regular basis at these appointments, and I don't know if that's true. But that is kind of what I'm assuming, just because they talk about how he's different after the appointments.
Okay. I mean, they mostly just say that he's
They say he's
grouchy and uncomfortable. I thought it sounded like they were saying that like the appointments were just really unpleasant to him in a bad mood.
maybe, I don't know. I got the vibe that it was more like a personality difference, but I could
Could
be
be
wrong. I might be reading too much into it.
possible. Anyway, we shall see.
Yeah. Yep. And I also know that Sai threatens revenge on Gordon. I mean it. I will get you today, even. And I wonder what kind of foreshadowing this is. If this is foreshadowing, I just
He's going to get back at him for calling
yeah,
him a baby, and
and how that's going to play out in the middle of this, apocalyptic situation in
that's
the
true
bells.
because Sai absolutely would be like, "All right, pause the apocalypse. I need to get back at Gordon."
Yeah, like this all can wait. I have to deal with this
Yeah.
first.
I mean, that's pretty much what he's like at the beginning of chapter 2 here. He like comes in
Yeah.
and Lillian
It's
is
like,
having a meltdown and he's like, "I just want it on the record. It wasn't me."
I didn't do this. This is not my fault.
Yep.
Just
Like,
can you confirm
priorities,
this for
man.
me? Confirm this.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, and I also wanted to note that Sai, when he's being snippy towards Gordon, says life is short, and then realizes what he said to them, and says, but he didn't get angry, and he had gotten angry in the past when I'd said similar things. He only said out the words "I know," and I kind of feel is because Sai has used this in the past to like in a shitty way. He's like used it like to needle them before, and
Yeah.
this was genuinely a turn of phrase that slipped out, and and Sai genuinely clearly felt guilty about it immediately.
Yeah.
So
That's
Gordon's
true.
like,
That was
yeah,
that was
yeah,
a nice moment between them.
yeah. Like, I think he genuinely, when he says sorry there, he means it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like life is short. Like even if you're not an experiment who has however long
Yeah,
to
whatever end
live,
date.
like life is short, but maybe not so short that you want to play hooky all the
Yeah,
time.
exactly. Get drunk and be cranky in your room or whatever it was that
Yes,
he said.
yes. I want to be that guy who doesn't show up to work when I'm an adult.
Yeah,
I'm like, mm-hmm.
sure.
We'll see how long that lasts for you.
So this Mary section is yours here. What do you want to
Yes.
talk about
So I
there?
wanted to talk about the epic romance between Sai and Mary.
Mm-hmm.
The one that Sai just completely, like, it's not even like he's oblivious about it. He's like actively going out of his way to come up with justifications for why it's like
Yeah.
scheming and whatever. And I thought it was hilarious because all of the other lambs are like, mm-hmm, yep. Like the first thing that Gordon says, like to Sai when Gordon wakes him up in the morning is, yep, Mary can't wake you up every day, much as you'd like her to do.
And then the whole like,
And then the
oh,
whole
you
thing
want to
is
be a
like the
baby in
thing that
front of
gets him. Yeah,
Mary.
exactly. That's what gets him out of bed. Is like you don't want to look like a baby in front of Mary.
Yeah.
It's like Gordon is like, yes, you're besotted with her, and I am going to use this to my advantage. And then later on, like, oh, Sai has this whole thing about like,
Wanting
Jamie,
to be.
don't get weird about this. I want to be a girl. And Jamie's like, okay.
Explain, please.
Yes. And he's like, well, manipulating people would be so much easier. I mean, look what Han does. And Jamie's like, and he's like, and I could go into the girls' washroom and be with Mary. There it is. I knew
Yep.
that was coming. It's like, yep.
Well, it kind of very much has that vibe of like that, you know, elementary school crush where you don't really know how to like, you're pulling
Yeah.
pigtails and
Yeah. Yeah. But it was just like, Jamie was like,
yeah,
I
like
don't
come
know
on.
where you're going with this, but I know that it's going to involve Mary somehow. Also, that whole thing was just hilarious. Like, just
Oh yeah.
deciding that was how he wanted to go.
Hmm.
And then, like, 2 paragraphs later, he refers to his appointment as that time of the month. And
Yep.
oh, goodness.
So speaking of Jamie,
Yes. Jamie is on point, as usual. Best friend material for Sai.
absolutely, and yeah, I wrote this note, but I don't remember. Like I don't really remember the context when I wrote it because I wrote it a couple weeks ago. But just the fact that he calls Jamie his best friend feels sad, just because they both know that there's an end date to it, even if they don't know the end date.
Because of the expiry dates.
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of has that feeling of like, maybe I'm stretching a little bit, but of like, kids calling each other best friends. And then, you grow up, you grow apart, you grow older, you split apart. So even if you don't have an expiration date, best friends doesn't necessarily mean much in like the grand scheme of things.
Uh-huh. But, like, even though we know about the expiry dates, they don't really act as if they affect them for the most part.
No, I
And
guess
they
not.
are best friends in the meantime.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So, I don't know. I thought it was just like they're best friends. So they say they're best friends because they're best friends.
Yeah, it just felt a bit bittersweet.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The whole expiry dates thing kind of does
Just no matter
cast,
what, has a bit
yeah,
of
a bit of a downer to
Yeah.
the whole relationship between all of these characters. Anyway, now that we've discussed all the serious stuff about Jamie, it's time for us to discuss the best thing, which is that Jamie is a little word nerd.
who's not allowed to learn Latin.
And it warms my heart because I am also a bit of a word nerd, as I think are you.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think you put in this first word that you want to talk
Propinquity.
about.
I did not know this word, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
It's an interesting word, which, as defined in the thing, is building relationships. Actually, let me look up the actual definition before I bullshit myself. Yeah, the
Look
state
it
of
away.
being.
Everyone will believe you because nobody else has heard that word either.
Yep. Did you know it before?
Probably
You gonna
not.
pretend you did?
Pardon?
Are you gonna pretend you knew the word?
I knew it. It's a word that I use often in casual conversation.
Propinquitinousness. Yeah, the state of being close to someone or something.
Sure. That's a lot of word for a simple concept.
Very simple concept. Yep.
I think we would
But
normally call that closeness.
I would have thought so.
Anyway,
Yeah. But
it is a real word, though, unlike this next one we're going to talk about.
but yeah, please
Sorry,
carry
go
on.
ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Unlike this next word we're going to talk about, which
Yep.
is tetradeleoclythrophobia,
Which is a phobia based on the
which
there, and like all phobias, is a made-up word.
yes. So I thought it was He just like says it out of nowhere too. Like he goes
Yep.
off with sigh, and then he turns to him and says tetradeleoclythrophobia. And he's like, "What? I wanted to take a stab at it." So this is Lillian.
Lillian.
Lillian has her meltdown at the beginning of the chapter, which we've mentioned a few times so far. And I think it was Jamie who said that she had claustrophobia. It might have been Gordon.
I think
And
it was
she said-
Jamie.
And she said, I do not have claustrophobia. I have phobia of this.
This like situation that we are in right now, this horrible thing that we are living through.
Which Jamie later describes as a phobia of being trapped in a place with monsters and life exterminating death traps.
Which I don't know if phobia is the right word there, because phobia kind of implies a sort of degree of irrationalness to it.
Yes.
Whereas being afraid of being trapped in an environment with monsters and death threats is perfectly reasonable.
Yes. Yes. So, as you said, phobia names are all made up.
Yeah.
And there is no, like, actual word for it. Like, he acts as if he thinks there's a word. Like, oh, I don't know what the word is, and, like, I want to look it up and see if I got it right. It's like, there is no word for that. Nobody's come up with a word for that. Even in this universe, nobody has, given how, well-funded the psychology department is.
Linguistics and etymology and psychology here. It's
So anyway, his attempt to coin a word for it is as valid as anyone else's.
Absolutely, especially considering, as I said before, they don't let him learn Latin.
Yes. And how much of this word do you think actually comes from Latin?
I would assume a fair amount of it comes from Greek.
Yes. So there's 4 parts to this word. Tetra, delio, clythrophobia. Of those 4 parts, one of them comes from Latin, and 3 of them come from...
Which one is the Latin?
Delio.
Okay.
Phobia itself is a Greek word, and most of these types of words are Greek in origin or coined from Greek words. Not all of them. Some people like to mix in some Latin. Some people like to just mix in some English.
Whatever vulgar language they're using.
Whatever they feel like using, whatever makes sense, like whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's see how he did by looking up these parts of the word for him and seeing whether he got it right, because he said he'll be bothered about it for a long time. So we're going to do him a favor, look these up and see how well he did. So tetra, the first part, is the number 4. So tetraphobia is the fear of the number 4. Pretty sure that's not what he meant. Pretty sure he meant terraphobia. Terra being monsters. He's talking about being trapped in a place with monsters, so he's already made a mistake. Good job, Jamie. You've already screwed up. Easy mistake, considering he's not allowed to learn Latin or presumably Greek, and that he's making up words in the middle of the apocalypse. The second part of the word is delio, which is Latin, and it means I destroy. Deleophobia is not a real word. Like terraphobia is a real word. People have used that word in English before. Deleophobia has not, and the only example of it that I could find was one of those lists of, I felt like making a lot of phobia words today, and deleophobia is one that I made up, and their definition for it was a fear of erasers.
But so it still feels like fear of erasers is much more of a stretch than
a fear of life exterminating death traps.
Yeah, I feel like
yes.
Deleophobia.
I did find a couple of places that said the fear of destruction, which I assume is what it's going for with deleophobia.
Yeah.
The fear of destruction is apolymophobia.
Okay.
Which is just as, somebody made that up as deleophobia is. But either is probably fine. And then the last 2 bits are clythro and phobia. Phobia obviously is fine. Clythrophobia is a real thing that people have. It's a fear of being trapped. So that part is correct.
So, were you Jamie and building the word, it'd be terrapolympho... No. Terra polymo tetra. No, sorry. Wow, I stumbled over that twice. Terra polymoclythrophobia.
Yes, that would be my attempt at playing the game that Jamie is playing. You know, having the internet at my disposal rather
Yeah,
than just a vague memory of a dictionary I memorized when I was 2.
yeah.
Anyway, can't resist a word game, and I love
Yep.
that Jamie is the sort of kid who also can't resist a word game.
Do you like crosswords and whatnot?
I do like crosswords. I'm not very good at crosswords because they usually are just like completely ridiculous words that nobody's
Oh,
ever heard
absolutely. Yeah.
of.
Oh, bring it up because my mom does crosswords for the New York Times. She sold a few to the New York
Oh,
Times.
really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's cool.
absolutely. It's fun. I'm so bad at them, but it's just cool to know that she's done them. Anyway, just if you were into crosswords, I would have shared them. But
Well, share them with me anyway.
okay,
It'll be
I'll
fun to
ask
see.
her for like links.
Excellent. All
Anyway,
right.
moving on.
Moving on. Helen.
She's best besties with Mary.
Yes. We were all so worried about her and Mary not getting along. Mary was having to share a room with her and was very concerned. But now they're best friends and everything's good. And,
Yeah,
you know, we talked about Jamie and Cy being best friends. They weren't best friends. Helen and Mary are best friends.
besties.
By comparison, Jamie and Cy are like casual acquaintances at best. But it was really fun, like
Oh yeah,
seeing them like go off together, and then they come out, and Mary's so excited about. You'll never guess how many knives I have on me.
Helen hid all these knives. It's
Yes,
amazing.
and it's like yes, you two have more in common than you think.
Um, I don't know what I want to say about it, but I wanted to point out the radiant in white line, just
Okay,
because there's so much symbolism traditionally associated with,
yes, and this is
especially
when they come out after having like
yeah,
cleaned up each other. Their Cy says that they're both dressed in white and radiant in white.
radiant in white.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's just like I said, so much symbolism
Mm-hmm.
associated with, especially young girls in white,
Yes.
just literarily, traditionally.
Mm-hmm. And it's
So
followed up with "Girls Are Scary." I think it's
yeah,
just those two.
exactly. Yeah, just the contrast between those points
Yeah, because the white is like a symbol of innocence
and
usually.
purity and yeah,
Yeah. So it's like, look at these two innocent murderous.
murderers.
Yes. It's
Yeah,
delightful. I love everything about these.
yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of emphasis on Helen being unnerving, at least to Cy in this chapter, because
Mm-hmm.
I still feel there's a disconnect between how Cy sees Helen and how Helen sees Helen, and I guess how the
I mean, I
world
feel like
sees
that's kind of
Helen.
intrinsic to who Helen is that how she sees anything is disconnected from.
But I feel like Cy sees her as far more inhuman is not the right word because I feel like Cy has not yet recognized or accepted that Helen is not what he thinks she is.
Okay.
Like I think he thinks every time she's doing anything, it's an act because she's learning to be better of herself. And I think there is not necessarily a distinction between her putting on a mask and who she is.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we've mentioned before, she's trying to figure out who she is.
Just like any kid
Yeah.
or teenager. Yeah.
Mhm.
Like and
It's interesting that excuse me, sorry.
go ahead, no worries.
It's interesting that Sai, who wants to manipulate people and wants to like be that person who convinces people of things, assumes that that's where Helen's coming from.
Yeah. That is a good point. Because I don't know that I'd made that leap there. That she's not. Yeah, Sai struggles, I guess, to see that people come. I mean, he kind of has that interaction or that thought about Gordon too. Like, oh, he's doing this to manipulate, and maybe Sai struggles to see both people who aren't the lambs as having really any agency beyond the manipulations of others, and
Sure.
to see the lambs as anything but manipulators in the way that he is.
Yes, I think you're right to a certain extent. Anyway, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, he he has a lot to learn about the
People.
complexities of people, despite
Yeah.
priding himself on understanding how they work.
I mean, he's what, like 12
Yeah, ish.
ish? Like, yeah. Oh,
Hmm.
every preteen teenager thinks they have the world figured out. And
Yep. Um, but it is interesting. Like, it's not just him seeing her behavior as uncanny. It
Mhm.
also points out that the kids at the orphanage,
Are unnerved by her a little bit.
yes, where they're just like kind of naturally assume that there's something off about her, and I mean that kind of makes sense. Like she,
Yeah.
no matter how good at acting human she is, like
She's still an octopus.
like doing that 24/7 with the people you live with, like
It's
eventually
hard.
they're going to be like, okay, there's something about you. There's something
Mhm.
about you. Yeah. So I don't know.
No, for sure. I mean, like you said, there's that line. I know for a fact that you can sit and stare at a wall for hours without a problem.
Yeah.
Like,
Like if she does that at home and the little kids see her doing that, they'll be
like
like,
that's different.
yeah,
That's weird.
yeah,
The fuck are you doing?
yeah. And it's not like you would want them to be like, oh, you're bad because you're different, sort of thing. Like, but
Yeah.
they do kind of naturally notice stuff like that.
I mean, yeah, kids are perceptive.
Yeah.
Though I don't necessarily get that Sai is, that she's going out of her way intentionally to make Sai uncomfortable when she adds naturally.
No.
I think that's just Sai looking into, for reasons to be unnerved.
Yeah. I don't know. Also, Lillian saying like, when I'm scared of things like this, and then Sai is being a penis, and Helen acts like she's seen worse, which is fine because she has, but it's like, yep, Helen
Really? Yeah.
Helen is equally at home, staring at a wall for hours,
As she is
or hanging out
engaged.
with murderous
Yeah. And
venom
also
monster or
creeping
spiders
kids
that can
out.
eat a horse, as
Yeah.
Lillian says. Yep.
Yeah. And I feel like, I don't remember if it was this chapter, but like Helen also was acting fairly nurturing towards the some of the younger children.
Mhm.
I don't remember if it was this chapter or something we came across
Oh, I
future.
definitely think I remember in a previous chapter Helen interacting with the kids.
Yeah, in a positive manner.
Yeah. So I don't know. Probably they have this sort of thing where it's like the other kids are like, yeah, Helen, she's a little bit weird, but like,
She's kind of
we're
cool, I
we're not gonna
guess.
be buddies with her, but she's fine. Like,
Yeah, and she's an older kid. Like
yeah.
she seems to be older than most of the kids that,
Mhm.
or she appears older. When I say seems, she appears.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about with Helen?
No. But we should talk about Mary.
We
We've
should.
mostly talked about Mary already. Like
Yeah.
Size and Mary, Helen and Mary. Like there's a lot of like Mary's relationship with the other
Well, the one
lambs
I think the
being
big
a
one
big
that
deal.
that comes up here that we should talk about is Mary and Percy's relationship and
Hmm.
how Cy is happy that Percy's advice coincides with his because that means he doesn't have to disagree with Mary,
Yes.
which I guess is also a Cy Mary relationship bit.
Yes. But it's also interesting that like Percy's influence on Mary is pretty strong.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And that and like Sai is very concerned about it, which makes sense. But also like it's not all bad.
No,
Like the advice to look up in case there are ceiling monsters is good
perfectly
advice.
reasonable
And
advice.
you know, just because he was the bad guy of that arc doesn't mean that like you have
You-
to scour his influence off her.
I thought you were going with just because he was the bad guy of that arc doesn't mean that he's a bad guy. And it's like, no, I'm pretty sure he was a
I'm
bad
pretty sure
guy.
he was a bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think as far as I can tell so far, Mary's influence from Percy seems to be not a problem,
Yeah.
at least so
Yet.
far. But Sai, of course, wants to be the only influence on her.
Of course.
So this is a big deal and a big problem.
If Sai could be the only influence on the whole world, Sai would be happy.
If Sai had to choose between being the primary influence on Mary or of everyone in the world except for Mary, which
I don't think he'd be able to resist the temptation of being absolute overlord of everyone in the world.
I think he would be paralyzed by indecision.
That doesn't sound like Psy.
he would he would set up some sort of Rube Goldberg machine in order to try and get both.
Yep.
And then he would fail and get neither.
For sure.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Last of all of the lambs, we have Lillian.
Who is not one of us.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because Sai in the past has treated her as if she's not one of the lambs. And I always kind of assumed that he was just being a dick
I did
to
too.
her to try and get under her nerves. But here, like, it's clear and contextual, or not textual.
Yeah.
That no, Lillian is not one of the lambs.
And
as far as Sai is concerned.
He sees her as useful to the lambs because she is not a lamb.
Yes. Or at least he says that, but like...
But it's important... Yeah, like, I think it's a very important...
He sees her as a person who is not a lamb working with the lambs.
Yeah, so someone similar to Hale or Lacey.
Yes.
And I think that, yeah, like you said, that's really important in the shape of the relationship between Sai and Lacey. And, well, Sai, because I think as we mentioned earlier, Sai's relationship, or the way he interacts with the world, is pretty clearly divided between lamb and not lamb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
so if Lillian is not a lamb in his
that makes
mind,
a big
then
deal.
Yeah, that really tells you a lot about how he thinks of Lillian.
Yes.
Whereas Lillian, I'm pretty sure, thinks of herself as one of...
Oh, absolutely.
One of the gang.
And I think, just from context clues, the others think of Lillian as part of the gang. At least Helen does.
They certainly act as if they do.
Yeah.
But I think there's maybe not enough information.
Maybe.
Because, like, until now, we kind of thought Sai thought of her as part of the gang as well, so...
But, I mean, in retrospect, it recontextualizes a lot of his behavior towards her and puts it more in line with the way he treats Lacey, for example.
Yep.
Like, it becomes a lot more comparable once you realize that he's explicitly othering her.
Yes. And, like, what we sort of thought was him teasing her now just becomes him dismissing her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's going to change at any point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because we've already seen him be slightly less dickish to Lacey.
To Lacey, yeah.
And and Lacey has done far less for them than Lillian has.
I mean, Lacey has been working on the project for presumably years.
True. I guess I'm just thinking textually. We want to see. You're absolutely right. There is a world beyond what the words are.
Yes. But yeah, he does like ease up on Lacey a little bit when she sort of acts in... Yeah, I forget exactly what the context was, but it was part of like her deciding to show him the expiration dates.
Yep.
And she's like, oh, she's actually like she's not like acting high and mighty towards us. She's actually like working with us and being decent. So like, maybe I'll shift my perspective of her a little bit.
Yeah. But she's still clearly not.
Yeah. And like he does say about Lillian also, like near the end, like if you do get through this, then maybe we'll start to see you as one of us. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I just felt like it was kind of a big letdown to realize like that's how he sees her.
Yeah. But, I mean, we're still early on in this story, so we'll see where it goes.
That is true. And also, like, Lillian has a big moment in this chapter with her meltdown at the beginning of chapter 2. She calls this the worst case scenario. She says that this is her worst nightmare. Like, being trapped with monsters and death traps, like, it just seems like business as usual for this gang. Mm-hmm. If she sees herself as part of the gang, then that's kind of, like, inevitable.
But I feel like, generally speaking, she's been sent out into the town, and like the lambs don't really operate in the academy normally.
Mm-hmm. So
and the bowels are like a horror story that people tell each other.
Yes. So this is like she knew that this could happen, but this is kind of like the worst thing that could happen from working with the lambs. But also I thought it was interesting how it's like she was like, she knows all the stories. She knows how all the codes work. She knows how all the like the security measures work, and
But
all of that makes
it's all
her even
academic.
more concerned about the situation.
Yeah.
And more freaked out.
It's like, all this academic knowledge about all the stuff that could happen and could go wrong and could be
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course,
devastating.
Sai being a butt to her, as
Well,
usual.
he was helpful.
I mean, not really. I mean, he tried to push her in the direction of being less whimpery, I felt.
Oh, I thought it was sort of a genuine attempt to be like, listen, this fear that you're going through right now, we need that because you're going to see things that we don't. But maybe I'm reading more into it than
I
needs to
mean,
be.
like, they do kind of make a point about that. Like, Mary is like, oh, that's kind of um,
Surprisingly
comforting.
comforting for
And Lillian
coming.
is like, that's not comforting, that's manipulative. And it's like, they're both kind of right.
Yeah.
And also, like, to us, they're both kind of right. Because he is kind of trying to comfort her, but also kind of trying to manipulate her.
Well, I feel like both of those are, like, can be the same thing at the same time.
I suppose, like, if you're trying to manipulate someone into being comforted.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what he's doing. Like,
I don't know. I feel
he
like
might. I think he a little bit wants her to be comforted because he's like deep down a nice, kind person.
yeah.
But mostly he just is like, let's stop this whining and do something.
hmm
And he's like, all right, we'll get her to stop whining however we can, and then we'll feel bad for her at the same time. But like,
Yeah. Oh, that's fair.
that's my read on how Sai is handling. I don't think he's actually being like empathetic at all to her. But it does
I don't
work,
know.
so
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, I thought he was, but it's
I also kind of feel like, if it's like, I'm freaking out because this is a terrifying situation. And somebody comes up to me and is like, yeah, you know what? You being terrified is really helpful to me. I don't think that would be very comforting. I think that would be
sure,
very,
sure.
it's like, well, I mean, like, it sucks that you're freaking out, but like, I'm getting some utility out of this. So,
Keep going.
keep it up. Anyway, but yeah, Lillian gets her fears under control a bit. I think Mary's and Jamie and Gordon kind of like,
And sigh.
well, Sai trying to comfort her, and the rest of them trying to like soften the edge of Sai's attempts at comforting her. Help. She calms down, and she actually is going to be really helpful in this because she knows what's going on. Like, Helen used to live here, so Helen knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Lillian also. I think that, like, Sai says, like, be the lady with the diploma that you want to be, and Lillian is like, I think that's what really gets her.
I think
is
so,
that
but
idea.
I think
Like,
that comes from Sai.
that does come from Sai. So yeah,
He did it.
you did it.
Good job.
Well done. All right. Anything else to say about Lillian?
No.
Let's
And
talk
our
about
others,
Rick.
I think we already talked about him.
Oh yeah, we did. We briefly mentioned in the
Yeah.
earlier that Rick was studying Sai for some reason.
Yeah. I don't
That's
know if there's
another
much
mystery.
more to say about Rick beyond that, unless there's something else you want to say.
Nope.
And
The other real person we run across is Dr. Patchy.
And we talked about him.
We talked about him. I thought it was interesting that like he was a Patchy scientist with the Patchy Project.
Yeah.
Like he's got that skin graft on him, and he's working on skin grafts on.
I also thought it was interesting that presumably we know he's an Academy scientist, but they say like, oh, he has some of the early prototype itchy skin replacement.
Yes.
Like, why doesn't he bother replacing it with a newer iteration that actually works?
That's true. Presumably he's
Has access.
yes, and expertise. Maybe maybe it's his own replacement skin that he's made for himself.
Doesn't trust someone else's
Yes.
experiments. Maybe he wants to get it perfectly right.
Maybe he's experimenting on himself as well.
Possibly. He wants to be able to create a child that is not a clone of himself. But
anyway.
Right. So let's move on to the discussion question.
Yes.
So what was our discussion question, Dante?
I think we had 3 discussion questions by the end of last year, I guess we could say.
Sure.
The end of last episode, we had our discussion question that has been running for the past like 3 episodes, which was if you were in the lamb's position, or alternatively in Mauer's position, how would you have handled the situation with the crowd in these chapters? And that was a long time ago.
That was a very long time ago. And Propaganda Pagoda answered, can't do the DQ as Mauer because I have privileged story information about where he's going with all this, so appreciated no spoilers. But it says, as Sai, I can't think of a way to do better than to buy my own reputability from doctored evidence plainly visible to onlookers, while also chipping away at Mauer's credibility. Gun to girl's head, lack of knowledge of the more imminent threat, creature that got Gordon, etc., and chipping away at Mauer's control by staging emotionally charged events. That's not an interesting answer, except by maybe pointing out the generalities.
This is
Here's
more
the
or
thing.
less what Sai did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Here are many things Mauer could be that would allow savvy and unscrupulous infiltrators to control, expose, or discredit him in easier and less violent solutions. If Mauer did not share the risk of dying to enemy fire with his compatriots, I would paint him as someone using the faithful for his own worldly desires. If Mauer were less competent, I could poison him, like Sai/Mary wanted, or plant an agent in his inner circle, or catch a private meeting or communication with damning evidence of wanting the status or control of command more than the same goals as members of his rebellious faction. If he were a poor soldier, I could taint his leadership as doomed by his incompetence, poor diligence, other lack of ability, and if he were less intimate with his inner circle, I could invade or poison those relationships. If his inner circle were crony yes-men instead of competent administrators and warriors, I would buy them off or kill them and diminish his reach. And yeah, it finishes off, those are some of the ways I might try to beat Mauer if he was a little less than he is. But I guess the thing is, Mauer is what he is. So
yeah, there's a lot of good strategies that unfortunately wouldn't work on Mauer, and I think Sai probably did the best that could be expected.
For sure.
Thank you to Propaganda Pagoda.
Appreciated. Our bonus discussion question: would you want to know your own expiration date? So yes, Dante, before we get into the answers, would you?
No. Would you?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like that would be
it'd be tough. I'm too much of an anxious person.
Yeah.
And I feel like as you get closer and closer to that date,
it would just like overwhelm the way you look at the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, there's that, I don't know if it's a fable or a story or someone, old story, someone learns that he sees death looking at him or coming for him, and he runs, he goes on a big journey to run away from death because he knows death is coming for him, and he dies on a mountain pass or something far away from where he was, from the city where he lived. And when death comes for him, he asks us, why did you come for me? I was perfectly happy living in my city and all that. And death answers, well, I was just very surprised to find out that I was supposed to come collect you up in this distant mountain pass because you were living happy in the city. I didn't see what could possibly cause you to run away. And
yes,
so just knowing that date, knowing the prophecy of like your own death or your expiration date would, as you say, taint the rest of your life.
I think it would. Let's see what some of our listeners said.
Yeah.
So Ripper 1337 says, yes, they would like to know their own expiration date. I say, I think I would want to know my expiration date. It would allow me to get affairs in order for my passing and allow those around me to grieve, as it wouldn't be a surprise. It would be heartbreaking and terribly stressful, but helpful to.
Sure, and I can see that. I mean, I can definitely see hosting like a death day party or whatever for myself, and like,
I think that if the expiration date were close, I would want to.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
Whereas if it were far off, I wouldn't want to know when. Like, I don't want to know if it's like 20 years from now or 60 years from now. But if it's like a year from now, then yeah, maybe tell me so I can like
get ready.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I think that's a good answer.
Sleepy Stapler says no. I think I'm in the opposite boat. I don't want to know when I expire because that would make it too present to my day-to-day life. Right now, death is a vague eventuality, but if I had a specific date in mind, it would be so much more concrete. I can imagine myself going insane, wondering if I'd spent every minute or every hour optimally, because at the end of that hour, the day is that much closer. Even doing things I love with friends and family would be colored by the thought of, oh no, I only have X months and Y years left to do this, which would make it that much harder to lose myself in the moment and truly enjoy it.
And Sweet Manzana also says no. I don't want to know my expiration date. I would spiral pretty bad. I'll spend more time worrying about how much time I have left instead of you.
Yeah.
So those are all great answers.
They are. And they're all
I thought it was really interesting that we got some yeses and some nos,
Mm-hmm.
which is great. We did also have an extra double bonus discussion question, which was discuss among yourselves how the story will end and don't tell us.
So
Some of them posted the answer. They did tell us, but we're just going to pretend they didn't and move right on to our new discussion question. So, in the same answer from Sweet Manzana, they also said the exploration and story discussion questions are very interesting, but you missed the opportunity to do the obviously superior question of which Looney Tunes character are the other lambs based on?
because clearly all the lambs are based on a Looney Tunes character.
Obviously. And Sweet Manzana is totally right. That is obviously the superior question, and that is our new discussion question. Yeah.
Yep.
Sweet Manzana actually gave a response to that, but we'll talk about that in our next episode.
Yeah. So, anything else you want to talk about in this episode before we move on towards the ending?
Let's wrap this up. It's getting late, and
You are sick.
we've been talking for a while, and I'm sure these lovely people listening want to go home. So
Yes, they don't.
that's how it works when they're listening to a podcast.
You're not allowed to leave until we're done. So yeah, thanks for listening and staying here and not going home. We hope you'll continue along with us as we keep going into Twig. You can read along with us at twigserial.wordpress.com. And if you do, or even if you don't, please go to Wildbow's Patreon at www.patreon.com/wildbow and support him, especially in this period between serials. It's how he can produce all these great stories and settings. And, we invite you to leave your answers to our discussion question in our Reddit thread and in our discussion thread in the Doof Discord.
Yeah, so you can reach us, as usual, at totwigpodcast@gmail.com. TO Twig Podcast on the platform formerly known as Twitter, where I have been kind of neglecting since it
Is no longer Twitter.
is no longer Twitter. But you can reach us there. You can reach us
might just take a hot minute for us to look at it and answer anything.
You can reach us at our Reddit thread in r/parahumans, our discussion thread in the Doof Discord. Kind thanks again, as always, to them for letting us use their platform. And next episode, we will be covering 3.3 and 3.4. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, this biology or punk fact comes from you.
Yes. So today, I think let's have a little talk about lady beetles.
So tell me, what do you know about ladybugs?
That's not the line. Read the script.
Lady beetles. What do you know about lady beetles?
Well, when lady beetles fight, it's called a lady beetle battle. And when they battle in a puddle, it's a lady beetle puddle battle. And when lady beetles battle with paddles in a puddle, they call it a lady beetle puddle battle. And when beetles battle beetles in a puddle paddle battle, and the beetle battle puddle is a puddle in a bottle, they call this a lady beetle bottle paddle battle muddle. And when beetles fight these battles in a bottle with their paddles and the bottles on a poodle and the poodles eating noodles, they call this a muddle puddle lady poodle beetle noodle puddle paddle battle. And
oh, wait a minute. When a fact is in the bottle where the lady beetles battle with their paddles in a puddle on a noodle eating poodle, this is what they call a lady beetle noodle puddle bottle battled muddled duddled fuddled waddled biofact, sir.
Well done.
I appreciate you for making me read that.
That, of course, is from Fox in Socks by Dr. Zeus.
Yep.
And I couldn't have a biofact where we talk about beetles without doing the beetle. Anyway, hope they enjoyed that. But let's get on to the actual fact. So there is this helpful infographic that has been going around the internet for a while now. But I pulled it out in the fall, which is when lady beetles tend to invade people's homes, and I thought I would talk about it here. So this is an infographic that helpfully shares the differences between ladybugs and Asian lady beetles. Asian lady beetles are very common in this part of the world. They are part of the world, yes, where they tend to be found in people's homes in large quantities, and it's very annoying. And so this is just some helpful tips to help you know the difference between ladybugs and these ladybug lookalikes known as Asian lady.
So before we start, are Asian lady beetles invasive, or what?
Yeah. So let's go through the step by step.
Okay.
So the first thing that it points out is that Asian lady beetles have an M-shaped spot on their thorax, which ladybugs don't. It says Asian lady beetles are aggressive and sometimes bite, while ladybugs do not. Asian lady beetles are harmful to dogs, while ladybugs control garden pests. Asian lady beetles invade homes, while ladybugs live outdoors. And Asian lady beetles leave behind an odor and yellow fluid, while ladybugs are good for the environment. What do you think of that for a biofact?
I want to know more about Asian lady beetles. Where are they coming from? Are they? Yeah,
So let me tell you something about this
sure.
infographic.
Is
It
it a
is
lie?
all BS. It is
Oh, interesting.
total misinformation, garbage nonsense.
So everybody ignore what Dante has
And
just told you.
and uh, everyone who's bought into it drives me wild and nuts because it's become so pervasive. I was at work over the summer and I found a ladybug and I showed it to my coworker and they were like, "Oh, that's not a ladybug. That's an Asian lady beetle. It's not actually a ladybug."
Okay.
I saw an article on the CBC back in November where the headline was "Homes being invaded by ladybug lookalikes."
Okay.
It is completely pervasive and it is completely nonsensical. So let's go over this one more time.
Sure.
So the first thing is that it's comparing ladybugs to Asian lady beetles.
Right.
And this is already nonsense because ladybugs and lady beetles are just two words for the same thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Also, ladybird, which is what
Well,
they call it in the UK and probably other parts of the world. They're all synonyms. They all refer to the same group of beetles. Bug scientists, entomologists like the term lady beetle better because they are actually beetles rather than bugs or birds. But Asian lady beetles are actually ladybugs. They are ladybugs. Anyone who says they're not ladybugs is wrong and has just bought this infographic at
okay.
face value. The next thing that it
Wait,
talks
so
about,
you're just saying that people go on the internet and lie.
yes, but it's not just that people go on the internet and lie, because we know that people go on the internet and lie. It's that everyone
Believes it.
believes it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe we should have done a biofact about house hippos.
Everybody knows house hippos are real.
You're
They're
familiar with house
tiny.
hippos, yeah?
Of course I am. Yeah.
Yes. So for the listeners who aren't Canadian, house hippos were a commercial
A documentary.
documentary. Yes, it was a heritage moment published by the government of Canada about the house hippo that lives in people's houses and is very cute and
They sneak out at night.
sneak out at night and so forth. And the PSA at the end was "Don't believe everything you see in a commercial on TV." Or in
Yeah.
this case, on the internet. So I just want to kind of run through some of these things that this nonsensical piece of garbage infographic says. It says that Asian beetles are aggressive, unlikely. Oh, the first thing I want to point out is that the Asian lady beetle that it has here is an Asian lady beetle. It's also known as a harlequin lady beetle. And the one on the left is a seven-spotted lady beetle. So it calls it just a generic ladybug, but it actually is a specific type of ladybug. It says that the Asian lady beetle is aggressive, which all ladybugs are aggressive to aphids because
Right.
they are carnivorous and eat aphids,
Which are tasty little
which are
insects.
tasty, but it won't usually be aggressive to humans unless they think that you're an aphid or they think that you're threatening it. They all control garden pests. They are all not harmful to dogs unless they eat like hundreds of them. They all live outdoors and will occasionally
Sneak into a
sneak
house
into a house if they find it's a nice sheltering
like
place when the weather's getting
any
cold.
insect.
They all leave behind odor and yellow fluid
Mhm.
because that's part of their defense mechanisms, and they're all good for the environment.
Okay.
All of them, including the Asian lady beetles. Now, as for your original question, which is, are they invasive? The answer is no.
No.
They're not
Okay.
native here, but they're not invasive. They're classified as non-native. To be considered invasive, they need to be classified as harmful
Mhm.
to the environment, which they are not. In fact, they're imported specifically to combat pests that are
Right.
harmful to the environment. And I believe that the other ladybug on that infographic, the seven-spotted ladybug, is also non-native
Oh, interesting.
in this part of the world. So both of them are nice little friends that you don't need to treat as if they're some sort of monstrous pseudo ladybug.
So, do you know where this infographic comes from? Why it's making the rounds? Like why it's so pervasive? If that's
I don't know. I've seen it on Reddit a few times over the
okay.
last few years. I do kind of have a sneaky suspicion that there's a little bit of racism in it, in that
I kind of had that
it has this
suspicion,
this like a negative propaganda against Asian lady beetles, and it kind of
Yeah.
started around when COVID started, and there was this whole
Okay.
negative attitude towards Asian anything at the time. I kind of feel like those are correlated, but that's just a suspicion on my part.
Yeah. Sure.
But also, like, these Asian lady beetles are very common and do occasionally invade homes. They're the only reason why they invade homes more often than other kinds of ladybugs around here is that there are more of them to invade homes.
Okay.
So
Makes sense.
people might see this and be like, oh, well, obviously the Asian lady beetle is invading the homes and the others aren't.
This plays
No,
into what I have seen in my
it's just
house.
the law of numbers. It's just there's more of them. But yeah, don't treat them like they're some sort of invasive pest that is whatever. Like, they're just ladybugs. Like, let them.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, fair enough.
So that is my bio rant.
Yeah, I don't know
for this week.
Let's call it a fact. It's a fact.
It's a fact. Asian lady beetles are ladybugs.
Friends.
Are friends. Yes. The end. And with that, I will wish you all good night.
And have a good night.
And we'll talk to you next time.
See y'all.
All right.
Top of the page.
I've hit start. I'm seeing lines.
I am also seeing lines.
Oh, before we start, I have to show you my podcasting t-shirt.
Live fast, eat trash. Perfect. That is amazing. And I think you should share that to the world.
Yes. I'll
Because
post it on the Twitter and the Discord.
Kelly Familiars right there.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where'd you find it?
My partner gave it to me.
Oh, where did she find it?
I don't know.
That is an excellent Possum Club shirt.
Yes. I'll also say my partner gave it to me, so you can use the sound clip instead of
her name.
Her name, if you wanted to find a way to edit that in.
I was going to probably put that at the end, but
yeah.
Yep.
I had a feeling you might, so I. All right.
No, that's clever. Yeah, smart. Anyway.